We are live Tuesday, the 14th day of 2022. My name is Kelsey Graham, and there is Kevin Kane.
Yes.
And the little icon figure on the far right of my screen is none other than the great Catherine Marie, who is frozen in time and in space. And the music that you're hearing in the background, who knows?
Who knows?
We're going to talk about a very wonderful thing tonight. We've got, I don't know, what is this? DSMP Freak? DSMP Freak. I don't know what a DSMP Freak is.
I hope that's not some...
Yes, you are the first Yeah, number one, right here. So we're going to talk about horror stories that come from being out in nature. This is the time of year the school is let out. People are going camping. They're going up into the mountains. They're doing all this outdoor stuff. And all kind of things happen in the middle of the night in the scary, scary woods. And that's stories we're going to tell, I assume, after Kevin does an EVP session with one of his hundreds of haunted dolls.
Oh, I got something special tonight.
What do you got?
It's not even a doll.
Oh no. What are we going to talk to?
This is a relic that I think came from the late 1800s. Not the cradle yet. I don't have that yet, but this is something I've had a few years. I think Catherine will like it too.
What is it?
It is an antique little jewelry carrier from the I think late 1800s, maybe very early turn of the century.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Catherine and I are just going to kind of kick ourselves off the screen, give you the entire screen, and let you get about your first 20, 30 minutes of talking to haunted items here. What in the world?
There it is. Look at that, Catherine. And you open it up.
Oh, Catherine, are you there? What is that?
You open it up, and the little girl, she kept her ring in here, the little girl that owned it. Uh-oh.
Wow.
The ring is missing. It might be in there on the shelf. But that's a little ring hold. I better go get the ring.
Dagger Spells Evening, y'all.
I better go get the ring.
From Alabama, right down the road from us here. Dagger Spells Evening to you, and you're just right there. Oh, these are the guys from the Comic Con. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you subscribe to the channel and, hit all the bells and whistles there so you can keep up with us. We always start the first 20, 30 minutes of the show with Kevin in his mansion of haunted items over there in Chelsea is going to do an EVP session. And Catherine, who is the little round icon figure there to my right, and I are going to bounce off of here. DSMP Freak, I was at the Comic Con, the one with the red beanie, and I was with my mom. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you had a good time at the Comic Con.
There's Polly's ring.
That's the ring that went into the case.
And she kept it in her ring, a little jewelry box thing.
Yes. Now, show the box again. Catherine, I'm going to bounce you off for a moment. And so thank you very much for joining us here. So we're going to see if this item is haunted. That's what Kevin's going to do.
Well, I know it is, but we'll see if she'll take it.
So let's start out then with, how do you know it's haunted?
I know because the lady that sent it to me had said she had seen the apparition of a little girl with long brown hair. I've seen a few in my house, and I couldn't say which one goes with which doll or item, but I have had some weird noises around that ring, and one of my dolls seemed to always be focused on it.
Okay.
So I think little Polly there had made herself at home pretty quickly after she came to live with me.
Now, how long have you had this item with the ring?
I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years at the least. It might be a little more. I'm thinking 2015, 16.
Have you ever done an
And
EVP
it
session with
did,
it?
and that's the thing. I've not done it yet because I
Okay.
always do things with dolls, and I said I've not done one with little Polly. I'm gonna try it tonight, and if she gets shy, I'm gonna try one-on-one maybe this weekend and do
All
a
right.
video on my channel.
Well, keep in mind we got some new
And
visitors who are with us at the Comic Con. So explain to them your devices you're using as you go through
yes, of
this.
course. But this was owned by little Polly, according to the lady I got it from. I don't have a last name yet, but she was
Do you have Polly
6
with you?
years old, and she died of an illness, and that was her little ring and her little jewelry box that somebody in her family gave to her. Now you can see how old that is. That ring is old. That's
Do
antique.
you have Polly with you?
She's supposed to be, in spirit attached to this, and I think this might be. It feels like it might be made out of bone,
Oh wow.
animal
Okay.
bone. I could be wrong. It might just be some kind of plastic, but thinking about the time it was made, I don't know if when did they start using plastic? I can't remember. I mean, if it was late 1800s, I don't think they had plastic back then, did
I
they?
think we didn't. I think we're well into the 1900s before
Yeah.
plastic became a thing.
So it feels like, and I remember that lady saying it was real thin bone that they molded. It doesn't feel really like plastic. Um, all right. Speaking of, she just said she's been following on Facebook and YouTube. Speaking of YouTube,
She's a lurker. She's been lurking.
she's been lurking in the background.
Yeah. All
And
right.
she,
I'm gonna remove myself to give you the full
okay.
screen, so you can do your thing, explain your devices and your uh, REM pod and all that stuff.
Yes, I shall
And
do
by the
that.
way, he had the REM pod with him at the Comic Con on the
Yes.
table with us. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna lurk in the background like
He's
dagger
gonna look in
spells.
the background. And I bet he'll interrupt at some point. I bet he'll pop back up there. All right, we're gonna do. Yeah, I had my REM pod with me and I had one day I had the cat ball, but I didn't have it on Sunday. I had it on Saturday because the shaking of the table kept setting it off, and I didn't want to make people think that was all paranormal, so I didn't take it back with me Sunday. I'm sharing this on my Haunted Doll page because I want to make sure they link in here before I start EVP in here. So, join us for Haunted Item and Creepy Vacation Stories. Here we go. So, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And the tools I'm going to be using are going to be the REM pod, and I'm about to show them in a minute, and the Spirit Box app. So somebody messaged me this week asking about that. Maybe they'll tune in here. That's why I want to make sure to share this because they can see firsthand how I do this. But I'm going to use a Spirit Box app called the Necrophonic, and that is an app you can get on any smartphone. And it's I think was like a $2 or $3 one-time charge. It's not anything you got to subscribe to. It's just a one-time charge you pay with your Google account or PayPal, whatever you use. And it's real easy. And, I tell people you got to be careful with these apps because you never know if one's just a toy. Some of them I've listened to that have what's supposed to be voices coming through, and it sounds like it's just repeating backwards what it's hearing from your phone. And in fact, I've heard my own voice come through, and they try to say, "Oh, that's paranormal," but I think some of those are games. But Necrophonic, I've gotten some pretty interesting responses from that, so I don't think that's all a game. All right, so I'm going to swing the camera around here. And we're going to
Dagger Spells just brought up something here. I want to address that. 2019, we held a paranormal Bigfoot convention over at the Sterling Castle in Shelby County, Alabama, and it sold out. And ever since then, I've had people say, we want to talk about UFOs, we want to talk about aliens and whatnot. So the problem is, of course, the next thing you know, the pandemic hit and the events kind of went out the window. but it's been difficult to round up the people that will talk about UFOs. I've had an experience. I interviewed, gosh, I'm brain dead tonight. But anyway, we're going to keep working on that. Stanton Friedman, who was the one of the originators of the Area 51 story and whatnot, and Betty and Barney Hill, he wrote a book about that he interviewed, I guess, the sister or the daughter, I can't remember which. So anyway, I'm still working on that. Thank you for bringing that up. And now let's get back to the rock star Kevin Kane.
Yes, because I'm about to use it. Here's that little cat ball for those of you that didn't see it before. I think the battery's going dead. There it goes. It's really a cat toy, but we found it useful in the paranormal investigations. If you're somewhere where there's not a lot of movement, you're just sitting there and you can use, especially if there's a child ghost around. They like to play with these things. And you might see it go off when nobody's near it or touching it. Sometimes they answer yes or no questions with it, or you see it actually roll across the floor. I've seen that happen at a haunted hotel in Tennessee. But if it's tapped, or like if a cat's playing with it and swats it, it lights up. I've had a lot of activity with this little thing. And of course, the REM pod, which is inside this awesome skull here. This was made by the Pennsylvania Paranormal Society. And so that's really cool. I have this old antique bell, just another simple thing if they want to ring it. I've not had any action from that yet, but we'll see tonight. So we have Polly here. And Polly, I hope we get to hear from you on this necrophonic. So let's get started. All right. Necrophonic. I like how it starts out with that voice. Hello, Polly. I heard a man say hello. This is Kevin. Hey. Is Polly here? Oh, I heard a whisper. No. I have Polly's. Oh, I heard a little girl. I have Polly's ring and her little jewelry box here. That is a beautiful jewelry box. And there's supposed to be a little girl named Polly with it. Can I speak to Polly? Yes. Polly, say hello. Polly. Polly, what is your last name? In my mind, I just suddenly thought of the word Kansas, whether it's the state or. Are you from Kansas, Polly? Polly, if you're here and you're afraid to talk, I have these toys here you can play with. There's this little ball. If you tap that or just push it, it'll start lighting up real pretty. And there's a bell you can ring if you want to ring that and play with it. Or you can come over to this silly looking skull guy over here and touch that metal rod on the back of his head. And if you do that, his eyes go all silly. They light up all silly and he squeals. So you feel free to play with any of these toys you want to. So comment says it said pretty, and then Polly doesn't like the camera. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, Polly. You don't have to be on camera. I'm just wanted everybody to see your pretty little box. Do you not like to be on camera? No. Well, no. Oh, said no twice. Well, it's okay. You don't have to be on camera. I mean, I'm just showing the items here on the table. But yeah, I'd love to hear you talk to me. If it's okay for me to ask, how old are you, Polly? So where are you from? So I got the camera pointed away from your box. Are you still here with me, Polly? Is that your... Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I got excited. Is that your ring sitting on the box, Polly? Where did you come from, Polly? Where did you used to live, Polly? Is somebody commented that they heard the name Bill. I guess I missed that. Let me switch hands here. My camera hand is getting tired. So, Polly, is there anything you'd like to tell us? To that, I heard full moon. Somebody said earlier today there's a full moon tonight. That's interesting. It said full moon. Bye. The little girl said bye. Who just said bye? Is that one of my little spirit daughters? Or is that Polly? How many are there any other spirits with you? How many spirits are with you? Comment, there's multiple spirits with you. Yeah, I already know because I have so many items in this house. I mean, even when I bring one into a separate room, the rest are going to follow, some of them. And that's fine. How many spirits are in this room right now? I'm going to guess the unlucky number 13. Am I right? I think I heard a yeah. Polly, are you here? I do love your little jewelry box and your little ring. Did you used to wear that ring? Which finger did you wear it on? Did you wear it every day? Who gave you the ring and the jewelry box? We're going to tell some, because it's good summertime coming up, and people are on summer break, kids are. We're going to talk about some creepy vacation and camping stories. Where was your favorite place to go to vacation? Pretty? I know Polly's little ring sitting there is pretty on top of that little box. It's like a star shape. Not really, more of a possessed. Is the ring possessed? Well, if you're here, I'd love for you to play with one of these items. So somebody commented it said fun. Yeah, I mentioned vacation a minute ago. Where do you go to have fun? Have you been on a cruise on the ocean? Yeah, I know it's possessed by Polly. Just making sure there's nobody else with it. There might be. Polly, tell us something about yourself. What are some things you like? The Night Lake. Ooh. They're catching some good things here. I like these comments. Oh, I heard Polly give a little giggle. Polly, are you friends with... Oh, that was a gasp. Polly, are you friends with Laura? That real pretty doll that I felt was connected to you? She used to sit on that big beanbag, suede bag chair in my doll room at the old house. And now she's in my bedroom. Are you friends with Laura? Yes. Does she take care of you? We got some great big sisters here in the Spirit family. Does Hilda still watch after you all? For those of you who don't know Hilda, she's a spirit of a lovely lady in one of my haunted paintings. Polly, I heard that you were sick. Do you feel better now? Thought I heard not anymore. Some words are here. Deep, jump. Did you like to go swimming? Yeah. I hadn't been swimming in a while. I used to swimming everywhere. The ocean, the pools. Yes. The lake. Used to like going out on the boats. Polly, what do you like to do for fun? What's your favorite place to go have fun? I just got a minute or so left. Is there anything you'd like to tell us? Polly, do you have long brown hair? That's what your last spirit mommy told me. Have I seen you before, Polly? Heard something say Polly. See. We have to get to our stories. Is there anything you like to say? Last chance. No, there was a nah. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off so we can get on with our stories. I thank you for being here, Polly. I thank you for putting up with me. I'm going to count down from 5. So any spirits that don't belong, you need to go back to where you came from. And all spirits back away. I'm going to close this door after I count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Goodbye. There we go. Now. Oh, there we go.
Kevin,
Yes.
we've got to go back and review this video
Uh-huh.
because after she said that she didn't like to be on camera, you
Yeah.
moved your camera and she kept walking into your camera on the right hand side of the REM pod.
Oh. So she walked into it. Even though, what did it look like? Like a light or
It was like white, and then you could tell that her hair was dark.
I gotta go back and look at that. I didn't even notice it when I was. Of course, I got this down, minimized.
And I want to thank DSMP Freak for documenting all these words.
Yeah, I was hoping somebody would do that one of these evenings. And
Kevin, turn your head to the. I think that'd be to your right. You got a tag or something, a string on your hat there?
that's this little. Where is there? It is. This little leather strap. It's just a decorative thing.
I kept seeing that. I thought
part of the cowboy hat thing. I got a couple of cowboy hats. This is just one of them. This looks more like a cross between a fedora and a cowboy hat. I got an authentic one up there. I'll wear next week.
We Emma, DSMP said we can call
Emma.
Thank you all for joining us, and thank you again for having done what you done there, what you heard.
Yes.
That with us. For all of you guys that's maybe new to listening and watching, these are archived. We're live streaming on several different platforms. It's out on several different Facebook pages and more than one YouTube channel. So, wherever you're at, hit the like, subscribe, join us on Facebook, blah, blah, blah. You know the routine, folks. Help us out. We're not asking for any money. We don't get paid for this, but the more likes and shares and all that stuff, it helps us out. We're not asking for any money. We don't get paid for this, but the who's that going? Who's that going? Catherine, is that you?
No.
Okay.
Was there an echo?
I heard myself talking.
Oh, yeah, that was me. I was putting a light out there.
Okay.
The REM pod just went off. Oh, it stopped.
So we do this every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Kevin is quite the author. I believe he's got 14 books out on Amazon. He's got one hardback book. He's also got two audio books, I think. One he did himself, and another he had a paid actress voiceover person that did it for him. And quite the author. I've got some books out. Dating the Dead, you can learn about it at datingthedead.com. So there's our little promotion for the night, and we're going to roll right into some storytelling. Schools are out. Schools just let out recently, and now we're getting into our summer vacations. People are going up to the mountains, they're going camping, and all these wonderful stuff. And so it's a good time for us to tell some campfire stories, is it not?
Campfire, doo-dah.
Campfire stories. And I want to start this thing rolling since Kevin did all that jibber jabber for 30 minutes there with Poppy. Jibber jabber. And I want to talk about the Wolf Girl.
The Wolf Girl?
Wolf Girl.
Wolf.
Of Devil's River. And this happened in Georgia, the wonderful state of Georgia. And this happened many, many moons ago, somewhere around 1835. But let's get right into the story. How about it? Would y'all like to hear about the Wolf Girl?
Wolf, yeah. Let's hear about the Wolf.
Wolf Girl. And you want to put that picture up on the screen, Kevin?
Oh, yeah. Here it is right here. I had it ready to go. There you are.
So the story... It looks very familiar, almost like looking in a mirror.
Oh. Jesus. Okay.
You got a hairy body.
The story begins on Chickamauga River in Georgia. John Dent was a trapper working with his partner, Will Marlowe. Marlowe and Dent traded together for several seasons, each year selling their hides jointly and splitting profits. However, in 1833, Dent met Molly Purfell, Pirtle, a daughter from one of the neighboring farms, and fell madly in love. So Dent told Marlowe he would not divide the profits according to their usual arrangement, but would sell his hides himself. Well, Marlowe, of course, wasn't very happy with that. So days later, they engaged in a public argument, ending when Dent fatally stabbed Marlowe. Now a fugitive, John fled west with Molly, stealing off in secret and leaving her parents in wonder. Months passed before Molly penned a note to her parents, postmarked from Galveston during the autumn of 1834. It read, "Dear Mother, the devil has a river in Texas that is all his own, and it is made only for those who are grown. Yours with love, Molly." Well, in 1835, a group of American colonists led by Dr. Charles Bill were camped at Lake Espinosa near what is now Carrizo Springs in southwest Texas. Half a mile away from the Bill group, John Dent and his pregnant wife, Molly Pearl Dent, both from Georgia, had built a brush cabin. Dent had come to trap beaver in the Devil's River area, north of the present-day Del Rio. The Dents were to prove fortunate in their choice of a site distant from the lake. A band of Comanches raided the main Bill camp and massacred most of the inhabitants, afterwards throwing the bodies of the victims and their carts into the lake. As Molly was approaching the end of her pregnancy, the couple was reluctant to travel despite the danger of hostile Indians, but moved on to the Beaver Lake area on the Devil's River. One night in May of 1835, there was a severe thunderstorm and Molly went into labor. She appeared to be having problems with the birth, so Dent decided to ride westwards for help. He arrived at a Mexican goat ranch on the Pecos Canyon and told them desperately about his wife's condition, begging for someone to ride back with him. But as the Mexicans prepared their horses to leave, there was a furious crash of thunder, and a bolt of lightning struck Dent from his horse, killing him instantly. After a considerable delay, the goat herders mounted up and followed Dent's directions. However, darkness fell before they got over to the divide to Devil's River, thus delaying the search. Finally, at sunrise the next morning, they located the Dent's isolated cabin. But what they found outside the cabin, in an open brush arbor, was Molly Dent lying dead, alone. She had apparently died in childbirth, but there was no trace of the baby anymore or anywhere. The child was never found, but fang marks on the woman's body and numerous wolf tracks over the area made the goat herders naturally assume that the infant had either been devoured or carried off by Lobo wolves. But this was just the beginning of the story. 10 years later, in 1845, a boy living in San Felipe Springs, now Del Rio, reportedly saw a creature with long hair covering its features that looked like a naked girl attacking a herd of goats in the company of a pack of Lobo wolves. The story was ridiculed by many, but still managed to spread back among the settlements. Around a year after this incident, a Mexican woman in San Felipe claimed she had seen two large wolves and an unclothed young girl devouring a freshly killed goat. She approached close to the group, she said, before they saw her and ran off. The woman noticed that the girl ran initially on all fours, but then rose up and ran on 2 feet, keeping close to the wolves. And the woman was in no doubt about what she had seen, and the scattering of people in the Devil's River country began to keep a sharp watch for the girl. There were similar reports by others in the region during the following year, and Apache stories told of a child's footprints, sometimes accompanied by handprints, having been found among the wolf tracks in sandy places along the river. A hunt was organized to capture the Lobo, or wolf, girl of Devil's River, as she had now become known, comprising mainly Mexican vaqueros. On the third day of the hunt, the naked girl was sighted near the Espinosa Lake, running with a pack of wolves. The cowboys managed to separate the girl from the wolf companions and cornered her in a canyon where she fought like a wildcat, clawing and biting frantically to keep her freedom. They finally managed to lasso her to keep her still. But while they were tying her up, she began to make frightening, unearthly sounds somewhere between the scream of a woman and the howl of a wolf. As she howled, the monster he wolf from whom she had become separated appeared and rushed at her captors. One of the cowboys reacted quickly and shot it dead with a pistol, at which the wolf girl fell into a faint. Securely bound, the men were now able to examine the girl and noted that despite a body covered in hair and her wild mannerisms, her appearance was human. Her hands and arms were all well muscled, but not out of proportion, and she lacked the ability to speak, only making deep, growling noises. She moved smoothly on all fours, but was rather awkward when made to stand upright. The girl was put on a horse and taken to the nearest ranch, an isolated two-room shack amid the desert wilderness. She was put in one of the rooms and unbound, and cowboys offered her a covering for her body and food and water, but she refused, cowering in the darkest corner. They then left her alone for the night, locking the door and posting a guard outside. The only other opening in the room was a small, boarded up window. But as night fell, the cowboys heard terrifying howls coming from the wolf girl's room. The strange cries carried through the still night air, unsettling her captors and soon finding answers from among the wolf pack in the wilderness beyond the shack. Soon there were long, deep howls coming from all sides as the pack drew closer to the house, and occasionally strange, howling screams from the girl answering them from inside her dark room. Suddenly, the large pack of wolves charged into the corrals, attacking the goats, cows, and horses, and bringing the cowboys outside, shooting and yelling to drive them away. In all the confusion, the wolf girl managed to tear the planks from the window and escape into the night. The howls soon abated, and the wolves crept back into the wilderness. The next day, not a trace of the girl could be found. Though there were a few unverified reports in the following years of a young, hair covered girl being seen with a wolf pack in the area, no one ever came in close contact with her. Meanwhile, gold had been discovered in California and westward travel had increased significantly. In 1852, a surveying party of frontiersmen searching for a new route to El Paso were riding down to the Rio Grande at a bend far above the mouth of Devil's River. They were almost at the water's edge when they saw at close range, sitting on a sandbar, a young woman suckling two wolf cubs. Suddenly she saw them, quickly grabbed the pups and dashed into the brakes at such a rate that it was impossible for the horsemen to follow. The girl would have been 17 years old that year. After that, she disappeared into the countryside forever. But during the 1850s and 60s, reports from soldiers at Camp Hudson, Texas, that they would hear howling and cries at night. It is impossible now to know what became of Molly Dent's daughter. And that, my friends, is the true story of the wolf girl of Devil's River. So if you decide to go camping in Texas, you might run across the grandchild or great grandchild of a wolf girl that originated from Georgia. Now, what about those apples?
Yeah, what about those apples? What about those apples?
What about those apples? That was a good story. I
That was
must
a
say
good
so.
story.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you got there for us? Catherine, you got anything?
I got one. Oh,
Go
Catherine.
ahead, Kevin.
Well, I got one up here that's pretty eerie. With summer, kids love to go to the camps, and that's a lot of kids. That's vacation for them, going to Boy or Girl Scout camp.
Well,
And of
I've
course,
got I've got my one of my good friends, Carl, who is a volunteer with the Scouts, and they're on camp this weekend in this
no.
100-degree Alabama weather.
And with those camps always comes, oh yeah, that picture, DSMP freak. That picture is from one of the books, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. There's three of them. I can't remember which one that one was in. But yes, I recognize that picture. I used to read those books over and over as a kid.
As
They
a
were banned
kid,
from libraries,
uh,
school libraries anyway, because they were scary, but they were written for kids.
scary. How scary
Right.
were they?
Real scary.
Them scary. I mean,
They
scary.
inspired me to like urban legends.
Well, that's a good thing. Something inspired you.
So, bang. So I'm gonna tell this one about
Give
a
me a needle and
terror.
thread.
I'm gonna tell this story about terror at a Girl Scout camp. And I'm gonna throw this
Hair.
creepy cabin picture up here to go. That goes with the art of the story here. Last summer, my daughter and I spent the weekend at a local Girl Scout camp. I don't want to name the camp and damage its reputation, but something seriously spooky happened to us there. This camp is in the southeast, well, that's where we are, in a heavily wooded area near the mountains. It's a beautiful place, complete with a waterfall, pond, and scenic hiking trails. We'd gone there every year for an annual mother daughter retreat, and before last summer, we'd never had any problems. The night of the incident, we made s'mores and sang silly songs around the campfire. Around 9:30 p.m., everyone headed to their cabins for bed. Because of a no-show, my daughter and I had our cabin near the pond. There was no air conditioning, so the cabin was pretty stuffy and uncomfortable. My daughter fell asleep immediately, but I tossed and turned, trying not to think about the heat. Outside, I could hear frogs trilling by the pond and the occasional gust of wind. Around midnight, I know the time because I just looked at my phone, the frog sounds abruptly stopped, as if someone had flipped a switch. I thought it was odd, but I didn't think anything of it. Then I heard an odd rumbling in the sky. It sounded like an airplane flying high overhead, but the sound just went on, echoing through the hills. I don't know why, but the noise made me extremely uneasy. I tried covering my head with a pillow and convincing myself it was just a plane, but I somehow knew that was not right. After about 10 minutes, the airplane droning sound stopped as abruptly as the frogs had. At that moment, it was dead silent. I felt like my daughter and I were the only people for thousands of miles until someone started pounding on the cabin door. Bam, bam, bam. My heart started racing so fast, I thought I might have a heart attack. My daughter woke up screaming and crying. As I rushed up to the top bunk, the pounding started again. Who's there? I yelled. There was no answer. So I yelled out the question again. Still nothing. At this point, my daughter was totally freaking out, and I was not far behind. I wanted desperately to turn on the lights, but the switch was right by the door, and if whoever was outside tried to come in, I'd be within easy reach. I could not help but think of the Oklahoma Girl Scout camp murders. That's a different story. Worse, I couldn't call anyone because there was no signal in the camp. After what felt like an eternity, I climbed back down from the top bunk, ran over to the switch, and turned on the lights. Once my eyes had adjusted to the glare, I noticed a weird haze in the cabin. I hoped if I was imagining things, or I hoped that I was imagining things, but then my daughter asked why there was smoke in the air. I wish I could say I summoned the courage to open the door or even look out the window, but I didn't. My daughter and I sat up all night with the lights on, confused and terrified. No one pounded on the door again. The haze faded away, and the frogs resumed their trilling. Eventually, morning came, and we left the cabin when we heard other campers walking around outside. I asked one or two of them, if they'd heard anything weird in the night, but they all said no. After that, my daughter and I quickly packed up the car and left. I told the counselors we had to leave because she was sick. I have no idea what to make of any of it. The sounds, the pounding, the haze. All I know is that my daughter and I are never going back to the camp again.
Never
Ooh.
going back.
Ooh.
We are coming close to the top of the hour here at 8 o'clock, and we really appreciate all the patronage to this thing. We've been doing this for four years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And dadgummit, we just couldn't stop. We started, and we've just been rolling ahead with it. And we really enjoyed the subject. We enjoy what we do here, and we try to come up with new stuff all the time. And
Yeah.
I have a new. Go ahead.
I just said, yep.
Yep. So I've got another story here.
Oh.
Another one of them stories. It is about, well, the weeping woman of the Southwest,
Oh.
La Llorona.
Sí, a la Llorona.
The legend of La Llorona, which is Spanish for the weeping woman.
Yes, and there's a
It's been a part of Hispanic culture in the Southwest since the days of the conquistadors. The tall, thin spirit is said to be blessed with a natural beauty, and I've got a picture up there, Kevin. I forgot to tell you, it'd be the latest one.
Yeah, I just put it up there.
She wears a white gown and roams the rivers and creeks, wailing into the night and searching for children to drag screaming to a watery grave. I like her already. No, no, no one really knows when the legend of La Llorona began or from where it originated. Though the tales vary from source to source, the common thread is that she is the spirit of a doomed mother who drowned her children and spends eternity searching for them in rivers and lakes. La Llorona, christened Maria, was born to a peasant family in a humble village. Her startling beauty captured the attention of both the rich and the poor men of the area. She was said to have spent her days in her humble peasant surroundings, but she would don her best white gown in the evenings and thrill the men who admired her in the local fandangos. The young men anxiously waited for her arrival as she reveled in the attention that she received. However, Lara Llorona had two small sons who made it difficult for her to spend her evenings out and often left them alone while she cavorted with a gentleman during the evenings. One day, the two small boys were found drowned in the river. Some say they drowned through her neglect. but others say that they may have died by her very own hand. Another legend says that La Llorona was a caring woman full of life and love who married a wealthy man who lavished her with gifts and attention. However, after she bore him two sons, he began to change, returning to a life of womanizing and alcohol, often leaving her for months at a time. He seemingly no longer cared for the beautiful Maria, even talking about leaving her to marry a woman of his own wealthy class. When he did return home, it was only to visit his children, and the devastated Maria began to feel resentment toward the boys. So one evening, as Maria was strolling with her two children on the shady pathway down near the river, her husband came by in a carriage with an elegant lady beside him. He stopped and spoke to his children, but ignored Maria, and then drove the carriage down the road without looking back. After seeing this, Maria went into a terrible rage, and turning against her children, she seized them and threw them into the river. As they disappeared downstream, she realized what she had done and ran down the bank to save them, but it was too late. Maria broke down into inconsolable grief, running down the streets, screaming and wailing. The beautiful La Llorona mourned them day and night. During this time, she would not eat and walked along the river in her white gown, searching for her boys, hoping they would come back to her. She cried endlessly as she roamed the river banks, and her gown became soiled and torn. When she refused to eat, she grew thinner and appeared taller until she looked like a walking skeleton. Still a young woman, she finally died on the banks of the river. Not long after her death, her restless spirit began to appear, walking the banks of the Santa Fe River when darkness fell. Her weeping and wailing became a curse of the night, and people began to be afraid to go out after dark. She was said to have been seen drifting between the trees along the shoreline or floating on the current with her long white gown spread out on the waters. On many a dark night, people would see her walking along the river bank and crying for her children, and so they no longer spoke of her as Maria, but rather La Llorona, the weeping woman. Children are warned not to go out in the dark, for La Llorona might snatch them, throwing them to their deaths in the flowing waters. Though the legends vary, the apparition is said to act without hesitation or mercy. The tales of her cruelty depends on the version of the legend you hear. Some say that she kills indiscriminately, taking men, women, and children, whoever is foolish enough to get close enough to her. Others say she is very barbaric and kills only children, dragging them screaming to a watery grave. When Patricio Lugan was a boy, he and his family saw her on a creek between Mora and Guadalupe, now in New Mexico. As the family was sitting outside talking, they saw a tall, thin woman walking along the creek. She then seemed to float over the waters, started up the hill, and vanished. However, just moments later, she reappeared much closer to them and then disappeared again. The family looked for footprints, and finding none, they did not doubt that the woman that they had seen was La Llorona. She had been seen along many rivers across the entire Southwest, and the legend has become part of Hispanic culture everywhere. Part of the legend is that those who do not treat their families well will see her, and she will teach them a lesson. Another story involved a man by the name of Epifanio Garcia, who was an outspoken boy who often argued with his mother and his father. After a heated argument, Epifanio, along with his brothers Carlos and Augustine, decided to leave their ranch in Ojo de la Vaca to head toward the Villa Real de Santa Fe. However, when they were along their way, They were visited by a tall woman wearing a black topalo and a black net over her face. Two of the boys were riding in the front of the wagon when the spirit appeared on the seat between them. She was silent and continued to sit there until Epifanio finally turned the horses around and headed back home, at which time she said, I will visit you again someday when you argue with your mother. In Santa Fe, New Mexico, the tall, wailing spirit has been seen repeatedly in the Petter Building, the Public Employees Retirement Association, built on land that was once an old Spanish Indian graveyard near the Santa Fe River. Many people who have been employed there tell of hearing cries resounding through the halls and feeling unseen hands pushing them while in the hall stairways. La Llorona has been heard at night wailing next to the rivers by many, and her wanderings have grown wider, following Hispanic people wherever they go. Her movements have been traced throughout the Southwest and as far north as Montana on the banks of the Yellowstone River. The Hispanic people believe that the weeping woman will always be with them, following the many rivers looking for her children. And for this reason, many of them fear the dark and pass the legend from generation to generation. La Llorona, the weeping woman. Hello?
Yes.
Kevin's muted and he don't even know it.
There, okay. I just was going, ooh.
I was probably making my noises out loud and didn't even realize it.
Yeah, I can hear you either sucking or blowing on the
Yeah, she's a sucker.
on your on that what you call it, that vape.
She is a vaping sucker. A sucking
That's
vaper.
Yeah, I turned it back up. I was giving the eerie effect.
I asked my brother why he wouldn't consider vaping or something like that. And he said, "Are you kidding? I don't want my pants catching on fire with that thing in my pocket."
So our friend DSMP Freak said that you heard about the weeping woman. You've heard that story before.
Yeah,
I assume that's the one she's talking about. Yeah.
I showed a comment during the story.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So what do you got there, Kevin? You got any more stories for us?
Of course, I got more stories. I got another
Really?
creepy cabin story.
Creepy cabin stories.
Yeah, lots of creepy cabin stories in these here vacation and travel scary woodsy camping stories.
A woodsy, scary, whatever.
This is a scary story from a haunted cabin. When it comes to creepy road trip stories and travel horror stories, this is by far my most terrifying. When I was growing up, my family owned a cabin in Hancock, New York, in the Catskills. It was mainly used for hunting, but we'd also drive up there to hike, ride quads, make campfire s'mores, and just be in nature. This cabin was small. It was actually a trailer that was affixed into the ground and then added onto slightly. Because of this, my cousin and I would share a big bed in the main part of the trailer, and my dad would sleep on the couch, but we were all virtually in the same room. One night, when I was about 10 years old, I woke up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night and saw a man standing at the end of the bed staring at me. I knew instantly he was a ghost because he was translucent and was dressed like he was from the mid 1800s. Quickly, I threw the cover over my head and squeezed next to my cousin, terrified. I must have passed out because the next thing I knew, I was on the floor of the trailer next to the couch. I could hear my dad snoring loudly, but every time I tried to reach out to wake him, something would grab my hand and pull it back. The next morning, I woke up on the floor of the trailer with my hands over my head. I woke up in an even weirder position the following night when my cousin and I awoke with the bed covered in vomit. It was from me, but I had no recollection of throwing up, and I'd never thrown up in my bed before. And that's where things get even more creepy. The next 2 times when I went to the cabin, I ended up waking up covered in my own vomit, with barely any recollection of throwing up. This is something that had never happened to me before, but yet it was happening constantly at this cabin. Eventually, we sold the cabin, though years later I was told that a family member once claimed to see a UFO landing in the yard when he got up to use the toilet at 3 a.m. Even now, over 20 years after the incident, I still remember it vividly, and I firmly believe that that cabin was possessed by something inhuman. Many people imagine injuries and lost passports when thinking about travel horror stories, but for me, it's definitely this. Oh, Kelsey disappeared.
Spooky.
Do you
Yeah,
have a
he'll be
story?
back in just a minute.
Do you have a story, Captain, or you want me to?
I'll tell a story. I went
Okay.
I went camping and backpacking a lot as a child and all growing up, and I still do it occasionally when I'm able to. Been a couple of years, but I've had a lot of strange things happen out on the trails. I have been hiking and found these weird spots that are just like stomped down.
Yeah.
And I thought deer at first, but deer aren't going to be traveling where I was on a regularly used trail like that. I wouldn't imagine. But one camping trip, the latest camping trip that I did was a backpacking trip. It was my daughter, my dad, and I, and we had no tents. We were under the stars, under a tarp in a hammock, and we were all kind of like in a circle in the hammocks between 4 trees. I'm sorry, I count. And Elizabeth has fallen asleep. My dad has fallen asleep, and of course, Elizabeth accidentally backwashed my water filter, and Catherine gets sick all night. Okay, so I'm laying there, got my flashlight in hand, and I'm playing on my phone, my tablet before they die completely, and I have to charge them again. And I start hearing noises in the woods, and it's probably 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and I quietly laying there in my hammock, and they get louder and louder, and I turn my cell phone off so it's completely dark, so I'm not obvious as to where I am. And I start seeing flashlights, or just flashings of light, not like somebody walking with a flashlight. It was like if it was a flashlight, it was a huge flashlight. And the noise keeps getting closer and closer and closer. And I reached down in my backpack and I grabbed my knife and I left it in the sheath. And I had it on me, and because there's no firearms in where we were on federal ground. And I'm laying there, and it gets louder and louder and louder. And it's not voices, it's just weird noises and the flashing lights. And it's louder, and it gets louder and louder. And it suddenly just takes a left turn away from me. Sudden, and the dog perked up, and she got real antsy. And it's my dad's service dog. And I'm like, Sally, wait, shut up. Wait, shut up. I don't want her to make any noises at all whatsoever because I'm scared and I don't want anybody to know where we are. And it goes on and on down, and they go down like I kind of followed it because I got out of the hammock and I kind of walked around and kind of followed whatever it was down, and I was in the went down to the waterfall down to the bottom of it, and I went back and got back in my hammock and got my sleeping bag where I could get out, one leg on the ground at all times, and of course I got sick the rest of the night, and then wound up going to the next morning about daylight. They whatever it was came walking back up, and they started actually talking human talk, and it was people.
Ooh.
Um,
We do
our,
a lot of
our,
camping
our,
over the years, and little bitty noises when you're camping can be very, very scary at night in the dark with no nothing. There's no people around. You're the only ones out there camping, and it can be scary.
Yeah.
our faithful watcher has wanted to hear a Skinwalker story. So when here's the thing, you talk about Skinwalker. Well, I had to think about the Skinwalker Ranch. I guess anybody in the
Uh,
paranormal has heard about Skinwalker Ranch.
yes.
Have we?
Yep.
So some called this place a supernatural place. Others deemed it as cursed. Terry Sherman got so spooked by the happenings on his new cattle ranch that 18 months after moving his family of four to the property, now known by many as Skinwalker Ranch in northeastern Utah, he decided to sell that 512-acre parcel away, which of course he did. He and his wife Gwen shared their chilling experiences with a local reporter in June of 1996, a long time ago now. They've seen mysterious crop circles, the Sherman said, and UFOs, and the systematic and repeated mutilation of their cattle in a oddly surgical and bloodless manner. Within 3 months of the story's publication, Las Vegas real estate magnate and UFO enthusiast Robert Bigelow bought the property for $200,000. Under the name of the National Institute for Discovery Science, Bigelow set up a round the clock surveillance on the ranch, hoping to get to the bottom of the paranormal claims. But while that surveillance yielded a book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, Science Confronts the Unexplained, at a remote ranch in Utah, in which several of the researchers claimed to have seen paranormal activities, they were totally unable to capture any meaningful physical evidence supporting Sherman's incredible stories. Then the ranch was resold to Adamantium Real Estate, which has since applied to trademark the name Skinwalker Ranch. So, had the Shermans been lying about what they saw, or under the spell of a collective delusion? Without evidence, the stories they told are difficult to believe, but they're hardly unique. The Uinta Basin of eastern Utah has been such a hotbed of paranormal sightings over the years that some extraterrestrial enthusiasts have deemed it UFO Alley. You can't throw a rock in southern Utah without hitting somebody who's been abducted, local filmmaker Trent Harris told the Deseret News. Indeed, according to Hunt for the Skinwalker, odd objects have been spotted overhead since the first European explorers arrived in 1776. Franciscan missionary Silvestre Velez de Escalante wrote about strange fireballs appearing over his campfire in LA. And before the Europeans, of course, indigenous peoples occupied the Uinta Basin. Today's Skinwalker Ranch abuts the Uinta and Auray Indian reservation of the Ute tribe, with Shermans seeing things that nearby Native Americans had taken note of centuries before. Not everything the Shermans saw on their ranch was skyborne UFOs. They also claimed to see mysterious large animals, most notably a wolf 3 times the size of a normal wolf that Terry shot at close range multiple times with a rifle, and it seemed to have no effect. Then on the night of March the 12th, 1997, after the ranch had been sold off, biochemist Colm Keller, working with Bigelow's National Institute of Discovery Science, claimed to have seen a large humanoid creature spying on the research team from a tree. As he detailed in Hunt of the Skinwalker, the creature was approximately 50 yards away, watching the team safely from a tree perch 20 feet off the ground. The large creature that lay motionless, almost casually in the tree, said Keller. The only indication of the beast's presence was the penetrating yellow light of the unblinking eyes as they stared fixedly back into the light. After Keller fired into the creature or at the creature with a rifle, it disappeared. It was then that I saw a single, obvious, oval track about 6 inches in diameter embedded deeply in the patch of snow. It looked unusual. A single large print in the snow with two sharp claws protruding from the rear of the mark, going a couple of inches deeper. It almost looked like a bird of prey, maybe a raptor print, but huge. And from the depth of the print, from a very, very heavy creature. Repeated sightings of human-like creatures have led some to invoke the name Skinwalker, a shape-shifting character from Navajo tribal folklore. Among the Navajo, skinwalkers are like werewolves, evil witches who can transform themselves into the creatures of their choosing. But Sherman's family ranch was 400 miles north of Navajo Nation. It was next to the Ute territory, and when the Utes and the Navajo did cross paths, it was relationship, explains historian Sandra Jones, author of Being and Becoming Ute. It was not friendly, Jones said. The Navajo were more aggressive people. They took slaves. They had Ute slaves, and there were direct conflict when the Navajo attempted to move up into Ute territory. While skinwalkers don't feature in Ute religion, there are still aspects of the ranch that make sense within the context of the Ute lore. Other strange sightings have occurred directly next door at Bottle Hollow, a 420-acre man-made reservoir on Ute land abutting the ranch, which was filled with fresh water in 1970 by federal government mandate. In 1998, a police officer saw a large light plunge into the reservoir and then reemerge, flying off into the night sky. One night in 2002, four young non-Indian men standing on the reservoir shoreline saw a blue-white ball in the artificial lake. According to the Hunt for the Skinwalker, the glowing ball dove into the water just a few feet from the shore, then emerged seconds later in a new form, a shimmering, maneuverable belt-shaped shaft of light. After performing a brief writhing aerial dance, the belt of light zipped away at a high rate of speed, hugging the ground before disappearing below the top of Skinwalker Ridge. The appearance of the supernatural around Bottle Hollow makes sense with the context of its belief. According to Jones, among the Ute springs and certain waterways were reservoirs of negative power. There were evil spirits and evil sprites that would rise up out of the water and drag you in. So the question now to be approached, my friends, is would you go camping at Skinwalker Ranch?
Oh.
I'd go camping anywhere anybody would let me go camping.
Well,
Well, just camp out in that bedroom.
I got a good one
So
here.
you can think, I think Emma, is that your name, Emma?
Yeah,
Or bringing
Emma.
up Skinwalker.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought of was Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know if y'all heard the full story of that or not.
Yeah. And next up, I got a creepy hotel. Evil presence in a hotel. Let me put my creepy hotel picture up
That's
here.
not the Clown Motel, is it?
No, 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 no. All right. Many years ago, I stayed at the Stoneleigh Hotel while attending a convention in Dallas. It has a penthouse suite that has hosted Elvis Presley, John Lennon, and many other famous guests. At the time I stayed there, the penthouse stood empty because it was undergoing renovations. Late one night, I befriended a security guard who invited me, along with one of my coworkers, to tour the penthouse. Of course, we immediately took him up on the offer. He explained that one of the rooms contained a hidden door that led to an elevator. Apparently, one of the previous owners had installed it so he could easily access a room on a different floor where his mistresses stayed. The guard informed us that one of the ladies had fallen to her death in that elevator shaft. He said employees could sometimes still hear the creaking sounds of the elevator even though it was no longer in use. My friend and I separated as we meandered through all of the rooms on the penthouse level. Even under its state of construction, the beauty of the space was clearly evident. We both had cameras with us and took lots of photos. At one point, I wandered down a narrow hallway that appeared to be a servant's prep area of some sort, which led to the kitchen. The lights weren't functioning at the time, and it was after midnight, so it was difficult to make out all of the details. Once I was a few steps into the space, I immediately felt cold, and my instincts told me to turn around, so I did. I continued exploring the rest of the space and eventually met up with my friend on one of the balconies. We chatted with the security guard for a few moments, thanked him, and then left. It wasn't until the next day when we were driving home from the convention that we started discussing the details of the penthouse. I asked if she'd noticed the dark hallway that led to the kitchen, and she said yes. I told her I'd started to walk down the hallway but stopped myself because it felt cold and creepy, even evil. She was nodding her head in agreement and started excitedly telling me how she'd started walking into the same space and had been overcome with a feeling of pure evil. She described it as a very tangible physical sensation and said she immediately turned around and left the space. We were both fascinated that we'd felt almost the exact same feelings in the exact same area, yet neither of us mentioned it to the other until almost a full day later. It's one of the craziest experiences I've had in a hotel. Interestingly, I found out that the hotel is known to be haunted when I did some digging on Google. Apparently, I'm not the only one who has had a creepy experience here.
How creepy can it be?
Creepy.
Well, let's go back to the campgrounds here, folks. Except we're going to
Okay.
go to the other part of the world.
Ooh.
Yes, a campsite killer, the unsolved mystery of the Lake Bodom murders from 2019.
Ooh.
Well, actually, it goes back further than that. The worst night of Nils Wilhelm Gustafsson's life is one he doesn't even remember. On June 4, 1960, Gustafsson, then 18, headed for a campground in Espoo, Finland, to spend time with his friends. The group included Seppo and Tero Boisman's girlfriend, and Tuliki Maki, and Gustafsson's girlfriend, Mela Ermeli Jorklund. The teenagers pitched a single tent on the shore of Lake Bodom and commenced a night of socializing and drinking. At some point in the evening, they retired to the tent. The next morning, two boys hiking through the campgrounds on a bird watching expedition noticed the tent from a distance. They weren't close enough to see many details, but it was clear the tent had been torn and slashed. Nearby, a man with blond hair appeared to be walking away from the campsite. The boys continued on, apparently thinking little of it. Later that morning, a local passed by the tent and was close enough to observe a shocking sight. Outside the tent lay Gustafsson and Bjorklund, bloodied and battered. By some accounts, Bjorklund was partly hidden inside the tent's fabric. Authorities found Boisman and Maki inside, their bodies displaying knife gashes and injuries consistent with being bludgeoned. Bjorklund, Boisman, and Maki were dead. Only Gustafsson had survived whatever assault had taken place. When police asked him what had happened, he could say only that a shadowy figure dressed in black with bright red eyes appeared and viciously attacked the group. Months and years would pass, the police unable to garner any additional detail from the lone survivor of the horrific event. It was a case so sensational it became common knowledge among residents of Finland. Everyone knew of the Lake Bodom killings and how authorities were unable to locate the perpetrator. Children were cautioned not to be out after dark in case the killer was still lurking. That all changed in March 2004. After nearly a half century, DNA evidence prompted prosecuting attorneys to haul in a suspect they claimed had motive to kill and to commit the murders. The case had the backing of forensic science unavailable to investigators in 1960. Their suspect was none other than Niels Gustafsson. Investigators hadn't suspected Gustafsson at the time of the murders. When Finnish police arrived at the crime scene, he was in bad shape with a broken jaw, bruises, and a concussion. He couldn't remember anything other than his account of a supernatural figure, which seemed born out of a state of shock. Police tried to piece together what had transpired based on physical evidence, and on June 4th, the group had arrived at the campsite near Lake Bodom, a popular spot for camping and fishing located about 14 miles from Helsinki, on motorcycles. The bikes were still there when the authorities arrived, but the keys were missing. Gustafsson's shoes were also thought to be lost until the investigators turned them up roughly a half a mile from the campsite. No murder weapon was found at the scene. The most curious observation was how the killer had launched the assault. The teens had seemingly been knifed and clubbed while they were still inside the tent, with the killer slashing through the shelter in order to stab them. Gustafsson had been found on top of the tent. According to some version of events, so had Bjorklund, meaning she either crawled out of the tent or her body must have been moved between the time of the attack and when police arrived. The scene would have been mystifying under most circumstances, but investigators made their own jobs harder by failing to secure the area completely and inviting search parties to look for clues. Their assistance meant the crime scene was disturbed, making evaluations for footprints or other evidence difficult. With the paucity of physical evidence, the likelihood of finding a resolution did not seem promising. No arrests were made, and only a handful of suspects emerged in the years that followed. One person of interest was Carl Valdemar Gillstrom, who ran a kiosk business on the campgrounds and was reported to be an extremely irate man who often took issue with campers, presumably due to noise issues. Gillstrom was said to have cut tent stakes out of spite and even throw rocks at visitors if he was in a especially foul mood. In the campfire lore that surrounded the crime, some believed Gillstrom had simply snapped and brutally assaulted the Gustafson party. The theory gained momentum when Gilstrom died of suicide in 1969. Supposedly, before dying, he drunkenly confessed to the murders. As damning as that seemed, police declared Gilstrom could have not committed the crime. According to his wife, he had been in bed with her on the night of the attack, though some would argue that it was a coerced alibi. The confession was purportedly false, though it's not clear what may have prompted Gilstrom to take responsibility for the killings. Police had other leads as well. There was Paulie Luoma, who was said to be in the vicinity of the campsite, but his alibi for that night, being in another town, was confirmed. And Pentti Soinen was a crook who confessed to the murders while being held in jail on other charges. Little else linked him to the crime, however, and police considered it nothing more than jailhouse bragging. Another suspect, the unfortunately named Hans Assmann, had more of a reason to seem suspicious. A physician named Jorma Paulo insisted that at some point after the murders, Assmann had come to Helsinki Surgical Hospital with dirt under his fingernails and blood on his clothes. English language accounts of the crime didn't specify why he was seeking treatment, but when police looked into it, they found Assmann had a credible alibi. No one, it seemed, could be placed at the scene, no one other than the man who had managed to come out alive. 4 decades, the Lake Bodom mystery sat unsolved. Meanwhile, DNA testing was growing into a viable way to re-examine both current and cold cases, first being used in the 80s. But Finland was just a single forensic lab serving the entire country, had little bandwidth to turn its attention to old investigations. The Lake Bodom murders weren't revisited until 2004 with a fresh look at Gustafsson's shoes, which then became a focal point of a new round of accusations. Forensic scientists at the country's National Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab tested the shoes and found blood from the victims. Remarkably, the shoes were missing any blood from Gustafsson himself. How he could have been attacked along with the others, yet only have their DNA on his shoes, was puzzling. The explanation authorities believed was that he had committed the attacks himself, then discarded his shoes before somehow assaulting himself to make it look like he had been maimed by a third party. Investigators theorized that Gustafsson could have been compelled to murder the three because of some jealousy. Indeed, someone who was staying at a nearby campsite the evening of the murders testified in court that she saw Gustafsson and Boisman in a heated argument, with Gustafsson appearing to be heavily inebriated. Perhaps investigators thought Bjorklund had rejected his advances, or maybe Gustafsson believed Boisman was making a pass at her. That would explain why Bjorklund had seemingly been stabbed and hit more frequently than the others. So the police hypothesized that Gustafsson had been exiled from the tent, possibly after a fistfight with Boisman that left him with a fractured jaw. He then returned in a rage, the theory went, swinging a knife through the tent until his friends were all dead. The district prosecutor, Espu, had enough faith in the story to bring charges against Gustafsson with the potential for life in prison if he had been convicted. In protesting his innocence, his lawyer, Rita Lepinimi, argued that Gustafsson's blood had been inside the tent and that being pummeled at the hands of Boisman to the point of a broken jaw would have left him in no condition to violently murder 3 people. Lepinimi also criticized the eyewitness testimony of the camper, who had stayed silent about the fight she had purportedly witnessed for 45 years for no discernible reason and couldn't remember certain key details. During the 2005 trial, a police officer named Markku Tuminium claimed Gustafsson was candid after his arrest and said, "What's done is done," predicting he'd get 15 years for the crime. But Gustafson rejected that and stuck largely to the same story he'd been telling for decades. He couldn't remember anything other than going fishing with Boisman and that there was no argument. The court ultimately found that there was insufficient evidence to convict Gustafson, citing that too much time had passed to compile the accurate picture of the event, so Gustafson was freed. With nearly 60 years having passed since the events of June 1960, no answers appear to be forthcoming. The crime is still part of Finnish folklore. It inspired one heavy metal band to dub themselves Children of Bodom. The band even released a beer made of water from the lake. Some in Finland have tried to turn Gustafson's claim that he didn't remember anything into an inadvertent confession. If he couldn't remember what happened, how did he know he didn't do it? But such logic is not for the purview of courtrooms. Another question is why Gustafson's shoes were left so far from the campsite. If he took them off to sleep, why not place them near the tent? And who was the blonde man the boys saw walking away from what they later learned was the scene of the crime? Assman was blonde. It's not entirely clear what color Gustafson had at the time of the attacks. And if Gustafson had somehow worked up the nerve to stab himself in a staged attack, why wasn't there blood trail leading to wherever the knife was disposed of or hidden? The only clarity around the murders is that someone was successful in killing 3 people at the shore of Lake Bowden, whether it was a man, a woman, group, or something with glowing red eyes. They appear to have gotten away with it. So as you plan to go on your next camping trip, just think of that.
Oh,
A dark, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes seems to have possibly been the culprit. Who knows? Thank you for your patience, understanding as I presented that story from Finland, of all places, with some very interesting names. Assman, one of them.
Well, I got a story here, but it shouldn't be too long to tell. It's kind of a short one. It's a creepy encounter on a cruise ship.
A cruise.
Creepy, some cruise ships are said to be haunted.
Yes.
So I got this.
I think any place could be haunted. I don't think there's a limitation on what could or could not be haunted. I just do not believe that you can limit hauntings.
Oh no. When I first started working on cruise ships, I was warned that some vessels were more haunted than others. It was speculated that this was due to former guests or crew members who passed away while on board. In any case, one of the larger ships I worked on had 2 decks dedicated to the kids' club, which is where I worked. As children would start getting picked up by their families, we would begin to close different sections and fewer staff members would be required to stay behind. On the night that I was scheduled to leave last, I was working on the lower deck of the children's area. All the kids in the upstairs section had been picked up, so my coworker closed all the rooms, locked the main entrance doors, and turned off all the lights before leaving for the night. However, about 30 minutes later, I heard footsteps coming from above. The only thing above me was the kids' facilities, which had already been closed. I thought it was odd, but figured maybe a staff member had returned to get something. As the last kid in my care was picked up, I kept hearing footsteps coming from the upstairs. I went up to check, but there was no one there. Every room was still locked, and all the lights were out. I told some friends later on that they said multiple staff members had similar encounters in the same area. At that point, it was just known among everyone that there was a ghost who had made its home in that room. The creepiest occurrence was when the ship's security team called a staff member in the kids' center to ask why there was a child left unattended late one night as they saw a kid on the live security footage alone without supervision. The entire area had already been closed for the night, but it was checked again due to the phone call, and it was the same scene. All the lights were off, every door locked, and no children to be found.
None?
Think of that when you go on your next cruise.
Well, if you're talking about cruises, our friend Catherine has been on a mission to get to Hawaii at some point in her life.
Oh.
So I want to share a story from Hawaii in case she ever makes it there so she can be aware of what she may be cruising into.
Oh.
While most ghost hunters are looking for spirits, there are some ghosts you should never look at. Hawaii's night marchers. The phantoms of ancient Hawaiian warriors are said to roam the islands at night. In life, these warriors supposedly traveled at night to protect people so scared that the common man was never allowed to look at them. Breaking that rule meant death. The night watcher's job wasn't to terrorize people, it was simply to protect the most sacred, high ranking chiefs, depending on kapu status. The chiefs marched in front or behind the procession. The night marchers showed mercy by traveling at night to spare people from harm. Storyteller Lapoka Kapanui says. It's easy to tell if night marchers are approaching, he says. They carry torches. They march to the thunderous sound of drums. They give warning by sounding a conch shell. That's when you know it's time to run and hide. If you're already in the path of the night watcher's trail, legend dictates you must strip naked and lie face down. Are you listening to this, Catherine? There's a rumor that peeing on yourself will keep you alive. So to survive the night watchers, you have literally got to strip naked, lie face down, and pee on yourself. You making notes, Catherine?
I am.
You know I'm going to have to film this, right? Whatever you decide to do, don't look at them. If you're lucky enough to share a bloodline with somebody marching in the procession, you'll supposedly be saved. But I don't think Catherine's got any Kawani Lapoka blood in her veins. The night marchers are said to frequent sacred Hawaiian grounds such as sites of sacrificial temples and other areas of Oahu, including Yokohama Bay, Kamehameha III's summer mansion, Maikaha Valley Plantation, Kaina Point Valley, and Kalama Valley. There's even a night watcher's path that goes through the armory inside the Diamond Head crater, Kapanui says. In downtown Honolulu, there's reportedly a night marcher's trail that runs through the footprint of the Davis Pacific Center, not our building. In 2012, Kapanui met with an attorney or attorneys on the 23rd floor, and they claimed that the building's security cameras had captured the night marchers on video. A native Hawaiian cleaning lady was reportedly doing her job at night when a column of mist appeared. The woman died the next day simply because she didn't strip naked, lay down face down, and pee on herself. You got that, Catherine?
I got it.
Huh?
I got it.
Okay. The following month, someone claimed to have seen the ghost of the lady marching with the night watchers and disappearing to the other side of the wall. So if you don't strip naked, lay face down, and pee on yourself, then you will die and you'll become one of the night marchers, or at least you'll be marching with them. The night marchers are said to march on the last 4 Hawaiian moon phases before the moon goes completely dark. Beware of October 20 through 23 when Kapanui says the night watchers will appear. Kapanui recommends showing respect to the night watchers, and whatever you do, don't go looking for them. Yet sometimes you don't have to try looking for them. Ricky, a security guard at the Caddis Chute building, claims he once caught a glimpse of the night marchers during a brief trip to Wailua some 19 years ago. Ricky and his then girlfriend Jennifer visited their friend Richard and his son Ryan, who were, here we're tied in, folks, camping on Makalea Beach. Ricky remembers the exact date. It was July 5th, 1995. They arrived on the beach between 10 and 11 p.m. A distant flash of light caught their attention in the dark. It looked like a line of fire ants marching down the mountain of Dillingham Airfield. I thought people were hunting, but there was a long line of torches, he said. It was a strange sight at first because it looked like an endless line of torches disappearing off the mountain ridge. But he later realized those weren't hunters, they were night marchers. He recalls hearing the legend of the night marchers as a kid at YMCA camp in Erdman. One staffer always used to warn young campers about a night watcher's path in the same spot that he saw them. Luckily, Ricky and his friends survived to tell the tale. He hasn't been back to Makalue since. So whatever you do, don't go camping in the path of the night marchers if you're in Honolulu, on the beach, or several other locations there.
Ooh.
And if you do, I will again remind my dear friend Catherine, remember this routine. Strip naked, fall face down on the ground, and pee on yourself.
But I want to become a skinwalker.
This was not skinwalkers. This was night marchers.
Night watcher, whatever. I wouldn't mind.
Okay, well, okay then. Don't strip naked and face down and pee on yourself then.
I thought he was going to tell the story about the ghostly goddess from the volcano there.
Why don't you do our friend a favor and look up a story about the Conjuring home and share that real quick?
We got 12 minutes left. So.
Yeah, you can get a good story out in 12 minutes.
Right.
And we're going to do that just for you. You have stayed with us the entire night. We really appreciate you. And we hope you come back for more of our insanity. And I hope you enjoyed these stories. And I hope you enjoyed the EVP session with the haunted ring and ring box that opened up our show this evening. And Kevin's going to look up and he's going to share a Conjuring home story. The real story. It's that simple. The real story of the Conjuring house. Is that the one that they recently tore down?
No, they didn't tear it down. They sold it again.
Okay. Now,
Here's the story.
Catherine, did you read what Emma wrote here?
No, my computer's not showing everything.
I don't think anyone would want to be a skinwalker, she said.
I like the idea of being scary things.
You are a scary thing.
Thanks.
Oh, man.
I found a story here that of somebody who spent some time at the Conjuring. Oh, this is kind of long though.
I'll read it anyway.
Speed read it.
Oh Lord, God, this is long. All right, let's see what I can do here. And you don't. I I thought you were going to tell about the clown motel too, but I guess we're going to have time. Let's see.
No, we're trying to pay attention to what our guests want here.
Okay. I felt almost giddy. My sister and I had made it through a restless night in a haunted house, and in the morning, the old farmhouse actually felt peaceful. As I walked downstairs from the bedrooms, I felt proud to have stuck it out where others had fled. In the living room, I tapped the ghost detector device that had bugged us all night with its periodic beeping and made it light up. How about some coffee, ghosties? I asked cavalierly. The detector lit up strongly and wailed loudly as someone strode from the front room and came up behind me. Look, the detector likes you. It started going off when you walked in, I said to my sister Suzanne. She didn't answer, so I turned around. Suzanne was not there. No one was there. The front room was empty. Suzanne called down from the bedroom. Who are you talking to? So, winding country roads through a darkening autumn forest delivered Suzanne and me to the house on a dark and stormy night. The old clapboard colonial on Round Top Road inspired The Conjuring, the 2013 blockbuster movie about the haunting of the Perron family nearly 50 years ago. They say the entities never left. With Halloween all but upon us at the time, my sister and I decided to spend the night with them. This is no bed and breakfast. Guests come here to explore the paranormal, or at least try to last the night, and not everyone does. Every guest must sign a waiver acknowledging that the environment is designed to maximize the fright and anxiety experienced by patrons. Along with the loose rugs, uneven floors, and dimly lit stairs, guests could risk violent spiritual attacks, spiritual attachments, frightening statements, and unpredictable and surprising situations. Scarier than 2020, I wondered. With a deadly pandemic, civil unrest, political chaos, and a general sense of impending doom, the thought of things that go bump in the night seemed sort of quaint, though maybe not for those who live there. Corey and Jennifer Heinzen, paranormal investigators from Maine, bought the house in the summer of 2019 with the intention of opening it up for tours. Earlier this year, they began offering overnight stays at $125 a person. No, that's not bad. For people to explore the 3,100 square foot house, its barn, and the 8.5 acre property. They also provided paranormal equipment so guests can conduct their own investigations. The house is booked until January, but the Heinzen are hosting a live stream October 29th. I think this was last year, through Halloween with a seance on October 30th, which is the 43rd anniversary of the seance with the Perrons. As I drove, my sister read aloud from House of Darkness, House of Light, the memoir by Andrea Perron, the oldest daughter of the family who lived there in the 70s. She has since referred to the place as the Portal, cleverly disguised as a farmhouse. Her story begins, the telling of this true story is not intended to persuade the reader of its authenticity. Those who believe in the existence of the spirit world will not require convincing. Those who do not believe so will likely remain skeptical. That could also describe my sister and me. She's a fearful believer whose first question when I invited her was, can the spirits get into my body? I'm a rational skeptic. If this were a horror movie, I'd be the one checking out the strange noises in the basement. I love this spooky time of year and its promise of something mysterious, and yet we all have stories about things we can't explain. So multiple no trespassing signs were tacked up along the property, a wishful attempt to deter people from sneaking onto the grounds. The weathered house was dark and the trees in the storm. When the Heinzens' two large German shepherds ran out to greet us and their elderly chihuahua peered up from her blanket on the couch, I felt relieved to see them, a sign of normalcy in an abnormal place. The couple and their friend John Huntington, also a paranormal investigator, We're inside the small wing of the house where they stay while people explore the main house. They have a surveillance system with cameras in nearly every room and outside to keep an eye on guests and record paranormal activity. We liked them right away. They were friendly and passionate about the house and its paranormal history. As any enthusiast with an unusual hobby, they want you to love too. They had been investigating paranormal activity for years when they learned about this house through the Warrens files and the Conjuring movie. When the former owner had enough of uninvited thrill seekers and put the property up for sale, the Heinzens jumped at the chance to own their own haunted house and open it up for others. Its real name is the Old Arnold Estate, but the home of 8 generations of the Arnold family since 1736. They are taking care to research the history and separate truth from embellishment. While the area has seen battles, the house had not had any violent deaths. Bathsheba Sherman, the witch in the movie, was just an ordinary woman who lived nearby during the 1800s. She was buried in a local cemetery where her headstone has been damaged by vandals since the movie came out. People believe what they saw in the movie, and Corey said he had to dissuade them. As paranormal investigators, as silly as it sounds, we are historians, he said. We want to tell the story the way it's meant to be told because that's what the spirit wants. The Heinzens said they moved cautiously after buying the house and slept in the small wing of the house for the first 4 months. When they finally left the door open between the main house and the wing one night, they were awakened by a shadow figure. It was just peeking around the door, all black, just looking at us. I remember looking at it, and Jennifer was like, "What the hell is that?" Corey said. And I said, "That's a shadow figure, and it moved real fast." She said, "Awesome," and we high-fived each other. It wasn't scary, Jennifer said. It wasn't an evil presence. We were just excited. Their daughter and son feel differently. Their daughter's at college, living at their house in Maine. Their son, 18, saw a black mist over him in one of the bedrooms and left the next day. They said he won't sleep in the house again. The Heinzens debunk what they can, but some things they cannot explain. Black mists in the house, shadow figures inside and out, footsteps and voices, books fall off the shelves, and doors unlatch and open. The Heinzens tell the guests to be respectful of the spirits for their own good. So they opened the door to the main house for Suzanne and me, and it was like stepping into a familiar place. What does it mean when a haunted house reminds you of places you lived as a child? The colonial decor, the wide plank floors, the fireplace mantels, wall stencils, punched tin lights, all were reminiscent of the places where our family lived. That's why we were a little unnerved when Corey and Jennifer gave us a tour and described the hauntings the parents endured and the strange encounters others have had. They showed us the ghost hunting devices, detectors, EMF meters. There were also voice recorders to capture ghostly voices and spirit boxes. I'm old school, so I want to hear or see the ghost without embellishment, but Suzanne was intrigued by the spirit box and started asking it questions. All I could hear was static, but she got excited when she thought she heard our names. We went in the cellar where snake skins draped off the stone foundation, and the dogs locked in the wing of the house started to howl inconsolably. We stood beside an open well not far from where John Huntington saw a ghost woman with a broken neck, and with the voice recorder on, we asked questions and waited a few beats for answers. Is anyone there? Anything you want to show us? I asked. Corey played the tape back slowly. I heard my questions, and then something in response said, I am. Suzanne told me that we were not returning to the cellar. There are 3 bedrooms on the second floor, and each felt more oppressive than the last. Ceilings are low, the windows are small, and when the Heinzmans said their son and others have seen and felt strange things, I believed them. But we were staying the night, and we were going to end up here at some point. They showed us how to use the devices and left us. When the door shut behind them as they retreated to the wing of the main house, Suzanne and I looked at each other, and then the ghost detector on the fireplace mantel in the living room started going off. I'm feeling a little scared now, she said, attempting to smile. But why would you be scared? I asked. Because it's just the two of us. The device beeping stopped. See, I said, everything is fine. She looked up at the ceiling. We're just here for the night, and we respect you ghosts, you spirits. We don't want any trouble, so we hope that's okay. Silence in response. The big house was so quiet we could hear the click of the furnace and rain patter on the windows. Let's see if someone will talk to us, I said. We sat with the Ouija board, but nothing happened. Suzanne wanted to see the spirit box that John had built. She turned it on, and static and blips of speech echoed out. Is anyone here? She asked. Noises popped and whirred, and I caught an occasional phrase like vaccine and commercial. It was meaningless to me, but Suzanne turned pale and shut it off. We have 10 more hours, she said, curling into a chair. I don't think I can do it. We were in for a long night. Okay, I said, we don't have to talk to the ghosts. I saw a Scrabble board on a hutch behind her, so I asked, want to play a game? Corey and Jennifer had warned us that the library has the most ghost activity, but it drew us in with its warmth and light. We dumped the tiles on the floor, opened up some chips and salsa, and began rounds of speed Scrabble. So what if we were the most boring ghost hunters to visit the Conjuring house? When the device on the mantel in the living room started beeping again, Suzanne froze. We turned to look. Nothing. Hi, ghosties, we said to the empty room. We're playing a game. We distracted ourselves by talking about a TV show and eating snacks, pretending it was completely normal to be sitting on the floor of a haunted house and listening to a ghost detector. We were really trying to stay awake as long as we could. I didn't want to go up to the bedrooms, but time drags when you're dreading something that could happen. By midnight, we were yawning. 7 more hours to daylight. We left all the lights on and went upstairs to the first bedroom, which had 2 twin beds under the eaves. Suzanne pulled a package of sage out of her bag and made up her own protection ceremony. I respect the spirits that are here, she said, waving the sage in front of her. But I cannot help you, so please leave me alone and do not scare me. Let me be safe. I laughed at her, but it was my idea to check for ghosts under the bed. We burrowed into the sleeping bags, but did not get much rest. The ghost detectors downstairs woke me in the middle of the night. I listened, but did not move. My sister woke up to an overpowering scent of sage. Then something grabbed her feet, and she kicked it away. We both stayed hidden in our sleeping bags until the morning light flickered through the windows. We felt victorious. That was just enough scary for me, Suzanne declared. She had not let me out of her sight the whole time we'd been there, but now she felt safe enough for me to go downstairs without her. It's just an old farmhouse, I thought, shutting out the lights we'd left on. Nothing had been disturbed. I opened the bathroom shutters to look outside. Mist rose from the trees, and a stone wall and fence rambled behind the pasture. There was a large dark mass that looked like a man's torso facing the house under one of the evergreens. It was so odd that I waited to see if it would move, then decided it was just a creepy tree. As daylight filtered into the living room windows, I felt victorious. All I needed was coffee, and then there were footsteps behind me and the sense of someone's presence. I had wondered all night if this place was haunted, and I think I just got my answer. When the Heinzens opened the side door, and the dogs rushed in, restless and sniffing, we were blasé about the detector still bleeping. It goes off all the time, I said, like it was a smoke detector that needed new batteries. I downplayed hearing the footsteps, not wanting to scare my sister, but when she talked about feeling something grab her feet, John, the paranormal investigator, told her that's happened to him when he slept in that bed. They seem to like to mess with me when I'm alone, he added. Thanks to Speed Scrabble, we made it through the night. Corey and Jennifer told us about those who didn't, ghost hunters who begged the couple to stay with them, the man who spent the night in his truck, the team that provoked the spirits and got scratch marks on their skins. And yes, we bought the t-shirts they have that say I survived. Still, we both felt unsettled as we drove away from this October country and back to the city. I think about the footsteps and the feeling that someone was behind me. Suzanne is adamant that something grabbed her feet. I even wonder about that dark shape under the tree. I'll give the Conjuring House this. For a few hours, it took our minds off the horrors of 2020, and we were glad to leave it in the rearview mirror. There you go. I think you're muted
You're
there,
all
Kelsey.
muted.
He's muted now.
I was just saying, Omar joined us at the last minute. He said, "Get better late than never," right? So everybody say hello to Omar.
Yes,
Hello, Omar.
And we are winding down. We went actually 5 minutes after 9. Told a lot of stories. And had a good. I need to go back and listen to that EVP session with that Polly Dream. There was a lot of words shared tonight in that. And plus, a very interesting thing is as Catherine was paying close attention to that session. What did you see, Catherine?
It was a white figure with dark hair.
Coming from the side of the.
Yes, it was to the right when he had it on the skull.
Okay. So go back and review that.
Yes.
And my friends, share this video, like this video, and let's see. Wait a minute. What we got here? The shadow under the tree is a soldier.
Yeah, that's from the Conjuring story I just told.
Okay. All right.
Commenting on that.
And 7 dead soldiers, and in the backyard. We're gonna have to go night.
Yes.
Evan's got to work tomorrow, and I've got a wedding tomorrow.
Howdy.
So, but thank you all for joining us. Remember that this is archived in all the places it's streamed. It will be there until the end of Facebook and YouTube. And thank you again for joining us, Omar. Better late than never. It's always good to see your smiling face.
Omar, better late than never, Ekanarsian.
And other than that, peace and love.
Yes, peace and love.
Peace and love.
And